White as snow, red as blood. Chapter 15. Snow rushed as quickly as she could to her room, scaring a few guards on her way. She apologized profusely to them and had to explain multiple times that she had not been attacked by a monster. When Snow reached her room, her sister had the same reaction. Rose had been waiting for Snow to report in, and she feared the worst when Snow walked in with a disheveled bun and a tattered dress. "Did she attack you?" Rose exclaimed, taking her sister's hand and looking her over. Snow shook her head and briefly glanced at the full-length mirror, seeing what everyone saw. She looked like a complete mess, her hair half up while the rest flopped down to her back. There were even leaves in her hair. Though she had wanted to rush to Nathaniel first thing, it was good she came to see Rose first. Peeling her hands away from Rose, Snow began to unbutton the black dress before her sister took charge. Snow loosened her hair, letting it all fall to her back. Once Rose got through all the buttons, still demanding to know what happened, Snow turned and grasped her sister's shoulders. "Rose, there's an enchanted apple, and true love can break it. Go get Elijah and Richard and meet me in the Queen's chambers." "Enchanted apple? True love? Seriously, what's going on? Please, Rose. We need to act quickly." At that, Rose nodded and scurried out of the room. Snow slipped the black uniform off and changed into her nightgown because it was easier to get on than other dresses. As she walked into the hallway, she brushed her fingers through her hair, removing any leaves and knots. By the time she reached Nathaniel's door, her appearance was less startling, and the guard stationed outside the room didn't appear frightened or concerned as she approached. They did, however, question her. "Miss Snow, you shouldn't be here this late at night. Is your business urgent?" She didn't even get to respond when Nathaniel broke out of the room, causing the guards to salute him and go quiet. Nathaniel blinked rapidly, not believing Snow had come this late to see him. He was still dressed in his day clothes and had considered visiting her himself, but he figured she would be asleep. "Snow, I was just thinking about you. It's only been a few days since I've seen you, but it's felt like years. Have you missed me as well?" he asked, reaching out for her. She wished that was the reason for her visit and couldn't deny she felt the same way. Ever since their kiss, she had wondered if it was okay to ask for another or if she even had to ask. It was getting increasingly harder to stay away from him. "The Queen, we need to see her," she said, her hands warming instantly against his. "At this hour?" She nodded, and he didn't question her any further. He moved them away from the door and the guards. As they walked down the hall, he brought their knotted hands to his mouth. He first kissed her hand before blowing hot air onto it. "Your hands are freezing. Is it cold in your room, Snow?" he asked while still holding her hand to his lips. Before he managed to distract her even more, Snow brought their hands down and tucked her other hand underneath his arm. He smiled at the action, noting her slight blush but also picked up on her intense nerves. "My room's fine. I just need to get through tonight. Did my mother say something to you about being queen?" Nathaniel guessed. "I know it's a lot to take in. I'm still processing it myself, and Richard's been grilling me all week about a king's duties. Or are you still worried about Framsey?" They made it to the Queen's chambers before Snow could give a proper answer, greeting the guards that barely returned to check on the Queen's well-being. Nathaniel sighed, wishing he knew what this was all about. "Is my mother available? We need to speak with her." One of the guards turned to the door and knocked. A maid cracked the door open, a line of light hitting the guard's armor. "His Highness wishes to speak to Her Majesty," the guard said. The maid turned her neck, her mouth muffled by the door, but they heard the Queen grant them access. Both doors swung open, revealing the Queen at a vanity desk. She was dressed for bed, and her long hair was brushed out until it was silky and smooth. As they entered, her hazel eyes went from Nathaniel to Snow, and the doors shut, leaving them alone with the queen as the maid had dismissed herself. "If this is about your marriage, you can save it for tomorrow." "I'm tired," the queen said, turning back to the mirror. Nathaniel remained quiet, having no idea why they were there. Snow breathed and let go of Nathaniel's arm, stepping away from what comfort she had. She needed to face this without his help, and there was no telling how he might react. "Actually, Your Majesty, this is about your attempts to kill me." Queen Astrid slowly spun back around while Nathaniel choked on his own saliva. "Snow, what are you talking about? Why would my mother do such a thing?" Snow didn't look back at him, she just stared at the queen, who gaped at her. Astrid's eyes then betrayed her for a mere second. She glanced at the apple that sat innocently on her circular table, which hosted an entire fruit bowl. "The hair comb she gave me, she poisoned it. And she ordered Framsey to attack, but I don't know why." Astrid finally got over her shock and giggled as if the accusation amused her. "My dear Snow, no one is blaming you for the mistake you made that day. Let it go, and be careful who you point your fingers at. If I were a cruel woman, you wouldn't even be allowed near my son." Nathaniel reached forward for Snow's hand. "She's right, and Framsey couldn't have possibly gotten orders to kill you. That was years ago. Even I didn't know you back then." Snow stepped away, not letting him touch her, but she did face him. "I know it seems like insanity, but I'm telling the truth. I don't understand it, which is why I want answers from her." The doors crashed open, and Rose, Elijah, and Richard rolled in with red faces and heavy breaths. Astrid clicked her tongue, spotting the guards, and made outside the door as it slowly shut again. The audience was getting larger by the moment, but Astrid held the highest authority. As for Elijah, who knew about the hair comb, she felt assured he wouldn't confirm Snow's suspicions. If he did, that would mean the end of their happiness. He wouldn't throw it away casually after waiting so long to be with her. "What's going on?" "I was told there was an emergency," Elijah huffed. Astrid stood and gestured to Snow. Nothing more than a girl letting her wild imagination scare her. "Everyone, please, go back to bed. We've all been enduring restless nights." Nathaniel reached for Snow again, but she jerked further from him, getting closer to the circular table. "No. That's not it. She did try to kill me, and she's planning another attempt." This caught Elijah's attention. His eyes shot over to Astrid as he asked, "Another?" When Astrid avoided his gaze, Elijah sighed. He was willing to overlook the poisoning, thinking Astrid had learned her lesson, but apparently, it wasn't enough. His next words cut deep into Astrid's soul. "Well, I'm listening." "Elijah!" Astrid hissed, "You can't be serious." Her eyes swished over to her two sons as they soaked in Elijah's words. She wondered if they would believe Elijah and Snow versus their own mother. There was no question who Rose would side with. "Boys, what reason would I have to kill Snow White?" Richard and Nathaniel said nothing as their minds were clouded with doubt. Much had leaked out in the past few days, and they were still trying to comprehend it. They didn't want to fall for any more lies. Astrid tapped her foot against the floor, thinking. Then she taunted Snow with the only evidence the girl had. "Fine, go ahead and prove it, Snow. Search my room for poisons, hit orders, or whatever else suits you, but if you don't find anything, you and your sister will leave my kingdom immediately." The girl wouldn't be able to prove anything. Even if she pointed out the apple, it had no recognizable poison or enchantment on it. This was Astrid's means of escape while also gaining the chance to remove the girls from her side. However, Astrid didn't like the icy determination in Snow's eyes as she said, "I accept." The girl immediately picked up the apple and turned to Nathaniel. Astrid rolled her eyes, wondering what Snow planned to do. She wouldn't be stupid enough to eat it, but then Astrid remembered the wizard enchanted the apple to be irresistible to Snow. No matter, no one would believe Astrid poisoned a fruit in her own fruit bowl. She'd just claim someone meant for her to eat it, not Snow. Though, Elijah and Rose would remain suspicious. Ah, yes. An apple. Are you really going to stop there, Snow? You have my entire chambers to explore, the queen laughed. Snow tuned Astrid out and focused on Nathaniel, who watched her cautiously. The curse began to work its magic as Snow's hands shook. She resisted the urge to bite into the fruit and found she could not drop the apple. It was like her fingers were stitched into the apple's skin. "It's okay," Snow said softly, staring straight into Nathaniel's eyes, "you can save me." Astrid frowned, Snow's words confusing her, but then the girl lifted the red apple and bit a chunk off, granting the curse its victory. Rose called out Snow's name, but Richard held her back, waiting to see what would happen. Snow felt lightheaded and quickly sat down on the love seat by the table before her vision completely blacked out around her. The apple fell from her hands and rolled on the floor while her head landed on the soft cushions. Nathaniel raced in front of her, sitting on the edge as he shook her shoulder. Meanwhile, Elijah ran to the side and felt for her pulse. Richard hugged Rose tightly as she cried, his eyes landing on his mother. Astrid clicked her tongue in irritation. "Oh please, she's faking it. She's still breathing, right?" Elijah stood to his full height. "She does have a pulse, yes. However, just barely." "Well, she's quite the actress." She shook her head and glared at Rose. "How about you take your sister and leave?" No doubt she planted that apple herself with Rose holding on to a cure. "Don't you think you've caused enough damage to my family? Surely now, everyone can see the vile temptresses you are." Rose scoffed, pulling slightly away from Richard. "Look, Your Majesty, I don't understand why you did it, but Snow certainly didn't poison herself to knock you out of the picture. She told me about an apple before coming here. I bet if Elijah looked into it, he'd find out it's enchanted or something." Elijah groaned, hating the truth but knowing he must speak. "Astrid. There's no point." "No point of what?" she screamed, her heart shattering as he betrayed her further. "The comb," he urged. Rose stared daggers at Elijah as she held onto Snow's shoulders. "So you were in on this, too? You're despicable, the both of you." Elijah didn't like the look on his favorite student's face, so he quickly defended himself. "I did not help her do it. And I did not have any knowledge of the apple. But yes, I learned about the comb and warned her off." "And you forgave her just like that?" Richard asked, narrowing his eyes at the man he would never call his father. "Silence!" Nathaniel screamed, his eyes red as he remained by Snow's side. The room stilled as the grieving man turned on his mother. "How do I wake her?" Astrid was trembling, but she managed to shake her head. "You can't." It took every ounce of self-control Nathaniel had not to leap at his mother or throw her fruit bowl at her. Instead, he lifted Snow, turning her limp body so she sat on his lap. He pressed her close to him, crying into her hair. Rose and Richard gingerly approached Nathaniel while Elijah went to collect the apple. Astrid stood where she was, frozen in place as her mind peddled out more lies she thought they would accept. "Snow also said something about true love," Rose said, earning Nathaniel's attention. Elijah looked up from the apple, her words telling him exactly what he needed to know. The enchantment was based on the sleeping curse. The very one used on Sleeping Beauty. But he didn't need to explain because Nathaniel was already reflecting on Snow's last words to him. "You can save me," he repeated. Hope rose in his chest while Astrid's eyes lifted from the floor, believing they were foolish children to think love would break an unbreakable enchantment. However, she once thought love could conquer all. That if she had love, she could make it through the darkest nights. Nathaniel adjusted his hold on Snow and leaned in, kissing her lips. Her eyes fluttered, causing audible gasps around the room. "Snow!" Nathaniel cried merrily, kissing her again before crushing her between his arms and chest. Snow sobbed and put one hand on his shoulder, the other resting on the back of his neck. Rose was also crying, wiping away her tears with her knuckles while Richard patted her back. The queen was finally able to move, unsticking her feet from the floor. However, her movement earned her everyone's attention. Queen Astrid looked from face to face, feeling like a caged animal. When she saw no one to turn to, she tried to race out the door, but Elijah caught her. She kicked and screamed, hoping the guards would rescue her. They did not enter, and she knew this was it. This was what the prophetess had warned her about. This was the fall of Queen Astrid. Elijah tossed her onto the bed and shouted, "Talk." She sniffled and pointed at Snow and Rose. "I told you. They have ruined everything. I knew they would. A prophetess warned me about them. I thought I dealt with it years ago, but that ugly wizard gave me the heart of a pig, not the heart of a maiden with skin as white as snow and lips as red as blood." And imagine my surprise when they showed up, and I realized it wasn't one maiden but two. Maybe that's why the wizard couldn't go through with it. 2 lives were just too much for him to take. But not for me. Not when it means our happiness. Have you ever thought about how hard it was for me, Elijah? Marrying a man I didn't love. A man I feared would kill me? So when I heard that woman's prophecy, I couldn't let it come to pass. Elijah took a shaky breath, tears splashing down onto the carpet. Whoever this woman was, she wasn't the person he fell in love with. That girl had confidence in the future and assured him everything would turn out for the best. But she was right. He hadn't understood how hard it would be. There were days he missed her so badly he thought about whisking her away from the king. Life would have been hard if they run off in the first place, but at least it wouldn't have ended like this. "I am truly sorry, Astrid." He then turned to Nathaniel and Richard. "If you'll allow me, I'll see her out. We won't ever return. Just please, don't order her execution." Richard had a massive headache, and Nathaniel felt the same. On instinct, they turned to the girls who stood on edge because there was no way they wanted to make that kind of decision either. "Nope, no way." "I'm not answering that," Rose said before turning all eyes to Snow. "Snow, it should be your choice." Snow gaped but then glanced over at Astrid, whose silky hair had turned into a nest from her fight to flee. The woman's eyes were puffy, and Snow couldn't help but feel a deep sorrow and pity. "She's suffered enough, and I'm alive and breathing." Astrid sniffled, and then the sound grew until it turned into a maniacal laughter. Tears ran down her cheeks, making strands of hair cling to her face. She kept laughing, tossing her head back while slamming a fist against one of her pillows. Finally, she clapped and shouted, "See here, everyone, the fairest maiden in the land. The good-natured Snow White. All bowed down to the new Queen of Hamilton. Isn't my boy lucky to have a woman like her?" Elijah sat down on the bed. Astrid studied the apple in his hand, wishing it had the power to make everyone forget her sins. "Let's leave, Astrid." Astrid pushed the hair out of her face. She looked at Snow and saw an angel. The sight tore her soul apart. The girl may be willing to forgive, but not Astrid's boys. No, she could sense their apprehension. "Get me out of here. I feel sick," she mumbled. Elijah obliged, swooping her up into his arms. Before he left with the queen, he tossed the apple into her fireplace so it could cause no further harm to Snow White. He also picked up the queen's beloved mirror, which he let her cling to. No one protested at their departure, nor did they ask where Elijah planned to take her.